Welcome to the 10th installment of Four Winds on Wednesdays live stream. My name is Stephen Piazza, and it's my great pleasure to be the artistic director and the conductor of the internationally acclaimed Los Angeles Symphonic Winds. Today's episode will be dealing with the Hollywood recording industry, and we've got two people who are intimately familiar with that genre, and we'll be meeting them in the interview section of the program today. That's Geoff Nudell and Caryn Rasmussen. We'll also be hearing the extraordinary trumpet playing of Carolyne Maraghi, who you met earlier in this series when we were talking about her acting career. And then also Paul Frederick, who's done some interesting things with music of actually the early part of the 20th century, and also some things related to interesting combinations of jazz involving violin and singing and clarinet and saxophone playing. So it should be a fascinating show. But before we get into that, I wanted to thank those of you who have been so supportive of this series, as well as our Summer Sounds series. You know, we've had well over 7,000 views of these live streams and also that Summer Sound series. And the last episode we did, which had some great recording of La Fiesta Mexicana and Zacatecas in honor of the Cinco de Mayo celebration, that's received well over 500 views already on YouTube and Facebook. And if you haven't seen it, I urge you to go to the Los Angeles Symphonic Winds website, click on that one, and hear a great recording that the band was able to put together with the help, of course, of Mike Armstrong. And I also wanted to thank you for your great interest in the concert that we have coming up. First of all, July 18th at the Skirball Center. We're looking forward to that. There's it's a beautiful venue, and we're working out the final details of health and safety regulations and vaccinations and all those kinds of things to make the afternoon quite pleasant. Well, I'll tell you in advance what we're planning on doing. We're planning on having a concert at 3 o'clock on the 18th and also a concert at 6 o'clock. Each of these concerts will be limited in attendance to 150, so we can have appropriate distancing and all those things. And it looks like in order to gain access to those things, there'll need to be vaccinations on the part of the performers, obviously, and also as part of the audience. But we're working out the details with the Skirball Center, and I know many of you have signed up to get the emails relating to that. And so we'll begin to sell tickets for that, I believe, right around the 1st of June. We'll have those available for this July 18th concert. I urge you to get your concerts because it's next to free to go to these things. We wanted to make sure that everybody who wanted to attend and have a great big coming out party for the LA Winds can come. The tickets are only $10 each, so we can't make it any more reasonable than that. So I hope you can attend. Also, I wanted, before we go into meet today's guests, I want to play a recording that we did, a little over a year ago now, at the Valley Outreach Synagogue in Calabasas. And what we did, we had a concert that we paid tribute to Jewish composers. You know, one of the things we do over the course of our season is not only do concerts that involve the whole band, large ensembles, and also the choir, like the Valley Master Chorale, but we also do chamber music concerts. And this one we did a year and a half ago. And one of the pieces that we performed on that concert was by the great German composer who emigrated to America, Kurt Weill. And he and Bertolt Brecht did a setting of a piece called the Beggar's Opera, which was a piece of Baroque music. And they, of course, modernized it and turned it into the so-called three-penny opera, the most famous part of which is that song, Mack the Knife. Now, we're going to hear a little excerpt from this. It has the overture, which is kind of an exciting thing, really overblown. And it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek overture because it's very dramatic at the beginning, and it's only for a small orchestra, so it sounds almost silly, if you will, but it sets the tone, I think, for a very fascinating piece. And then there's a fugue section that shows up, kind of like a round, like Row, Row, Row Your Boat, that he's paying tribute to the music of J.S. Bach. And it's a fascinating overture. And I've taken some stills from various productions of it. So you'll see the stills. And then when it goes into the Mack the Knife thing, you'll see an eerie clip from the 1931 German motion picture of this that was directed by G.W. Pabst. And you'll get the real eeriness of Mack Heath. That's Mack the Knife, and he's sort of following two women to where the gentleman is talking about what's happened with Mack Heath and his Mack the Knife. And the women sort of decide to walk away from this creepy character. So it's a very interesting opening. I hope you enjoyed this. Then the overture and Mack the Knife section from the Threepenny Opera by Kurt Weill and the play by Bertolt Brecht. Isn't that a creepy rendition of that? Oh my gosh. Not so creepy was the great tenor saxophone playing that took place in that. And that was, of course, Caryn Rasmussen, who we'll meet later on in today's live stream. And also, one of the stars of last week's show, Dan Hernandez, was the great clarinet player in that. So that was very interesting setting of that. My first exposure, of course, was the, Bobby Darin recording of that back in whenever the heck that was. But this adds a whole new light, or darkness, I should say, to it. All right. So to add some light to our live stream today, though, I'd like you to welcome someone who we've already met on this series when she was talking about her acting career, but now we're going to talk about something else. So would you please join me in welcoming Carolyne Maraghi to the live stream today?
Hi.
Hey, Carolyne, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, listen, when we were together last on this series a few weeks back, we spent a good chunk of time talking about your acting career, but we didn't spend a lot of time about your musical background. And would you mind just telling us briefly how it is that your musical path led you to the Los Angeles Symphonic Winds?
Yeah, well, it all started with my wonderful mother. So she is a piano player. She was a teacher at the time when I was a kid. And she just loves music so much. And we had classical music playing in the house all the time. So she introduced us to classical music. And I played piano when I was in elementary school. Wasn't that good, but, I played it. And then I played French horn in middle school. And then I switched to trumpet in high school. And I just kept with trumpet. Yeah.
Now I've also heard you perform with Flight 584, which was, of course, did a lot of concerts at the Cantina, which is apparently closed down now. So we've got to find some outlet for the jazz playing. But what sparked your interest in the jazz performance world?
I always loved jazz as well. And I that was one of the reasons why I switched from French horn to trumpet, because I wanted to play more, I wanted to play jazz, Latin music, funk, R&B, like all the gamut. And my brother is a professional jazz player in New York as well. So he's always an inspiration for me. And yeah, so it was, as a trumpet player, since I'm also an actress and stuff, it was great for me to be able to do gigs at night and then shoot a movie during the day, or like a TV show. Like I could do both that way.
Excellent. Now, what about the piece that you brought to share with us today? Can you tell us a little bit about it and why you decided to perform it for us today?
Yes. So this piece is by a German composer named Karl Hern. And my trumpet teacher at the time, years ago, found it at the Conservatory of Music in Montreal. And I heard this beautiful recording from a Swedish trumpet player named Håkan Hagenberger. And I just love the piece so much. So I practiced it back then. And then when I was preparing for this, I was like, oh, let me dust it off and see if I can still play it. I really like it. Yeah.
Well, you did a beautiful job. In fact, let's crank it up now. Let's share it with our live stream audience and the hundreds that will hear it. Wow, Caroline, that was just great. You know, it reminds me that those of you who do get tickets for the concert at Skirball, Caroline's going to be one of our featured soloists. She's going to do one of the players on the so-called Bugler's Holiday that Leroy Anderson wrote. We're going to do that, as well as highlights from Camelot and a number of other really great tunes that'll work at the Skirball. So come join join me and Caroline. And actually, one of the guests we're just about to meet will also be doing a solo on that particular concert. And so let me, at this time, introduce two people who are very much involved in the Hollywood recording industry. Both of them are very good friends, Caryn Rasmussen and also Geoff Nudell. So please join me in welcoming both of them.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Geoff, of course, is going to be playing the great clarinet concerto by Rimsky-Korsakov for clarinet and band on that concert that we do at the Skirball Center. And Caryn, we heard already, actually a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it, that you did a beautiful piece? Was it the Bozza that you did? I don't recall what it was.
Bozza aria.
The Bozza aria, just beautiful. And Geoff, we've heard you perform here before, so it's going to be exciting. But now we're here to talk about the Hollywood recording industry. But before we do that, I was reminded, Geoff, when I talked to you the other day, that I thought that you and I had gone back about 25 years, but you reminded me that your stint with the LA Pierce College Jazz Band went back more than 25 years. Could you tell me just a little bit about your getting interested in the jazz medium? Because I know you didn't start out that way.
No, I sure didn't start out that way, Steve. I started off as a classical musician. That's my background, feeling most comfortable in that idiom. And I wanted to get better playing the saxophone, playing the flute, playing jazz, doubling, playing great stuff. And then the Pierce College Jazz Band was a perfect place to start and, build up my skill set. And that's why I joined. And that's when you and I met.
Absolutely. Now, Caryn, if I can turn to you, I understand, if I'm not mistaken, that Mr. Geoff Nudell right there on the screen had a great deal to do with your getting involved in the Los Angeles Symphonic Winds. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. He's the entire reason why I'm here today. I met him in 1984, and he was my first sax teacher, and he could have squashed me right then and there, and I could have just gone off to be, a secretary somewhere. But he was very kind-hearted and patient and was a great teacher, not to mention extremely talented. But he laid the foundation for my basic saxophone playing that everybody else could build on top of after him. And he got me to join the Pierce College Band back when it was the Pierce College Band, where I met you. And with your great enthusiasm, it was kind of contagious, though you had a stricter style than Geoff did during teaching. But nonetheless, it was great. You imparted the saying that I think of the most is, if you're going to do something at all, you better do it well. So, play the right notes at the right time. And it also carries on into the music prep career that I have now.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get into that in just a minute. But Geoff, I know that besides teaching Caryn, you were also involved in other educational pursuits. Would you mind just telling us briefly about some of the things you've done in the field of music education?
Sure. It all started way back when at Wilson's Music, where I met Caryn. And then from there, it went to Big Valley Music here in the San Fernando Valley. Then from there, Canoga Music. By that time, I had a pretty large private studio that I've maintained. And from that point later, I became a faculty at Cal State University Northridge, and also following that, a couple of years at the Colburn School.
Excellent. Now, Caryn, once you came to Pierce College, you didn't just stay involved with the band. Actually, you pursued something that I thought was kind of interesting and also put you in a great minority. As a matter of fact, because around that time in the mid 80s, I was as chair of the music department at Pierce College. I knew that we needed to get into the recording industry somehow and do some things with electronic music, which Pierce College hadn't been doing up to that point. So I bought a bunch of Atari computers. Some of you may know what they're probably out hidden where your 45s are, I think, somewhere in the garage. But in any event, you took some classes, and you were in the minority because once I walked into some of those classes, I thought, is this an all-boys school? Am I back at Notre Dame High School when I went to high school? Because there was hardly a woman at that time taking those classes. What motivated you to take those electronic music classes, which of course led to the career you're involved in now?
Yes, I kind of came at it a more practical angle. I love recording the band, and I wanted to find out how to make it sound better, as the building that we were recording in was very dry. And I thought, I could ask the electronic music teacher. He's the great Mike Watts. He's fantastic, very patient. And he always talked to me about all the little gadgets that were back there that you purchased that were in the rack that could make all sorts of cool sounds. And I thought after that little conversation that I would sign up for his classes and learn how to do the whole shebang, not just recording, but sequencing programs. And that really led into, unbeknownst to me, what my career was going to be in helping orchestrators clean up sequencing files so that we could make scores. And I think that there's a picture of a MIDI file. Yes, that's been cleaned up. All the little dots are notes and durations. And from that, it goes into a score, which I think we have a picture of. Yeah, well, it's kind of small, but yeah, from that was exactly what you saw on the previous screen. And from that's what the conductor would look at a recording studio. And then the part is like, there's the violin part for what came out of the score. So I had no idea that when I started working on that this is what it was going to turn into.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And there's a picture of, now what's that picture of, Caryn? Can you tell us what that's?
I can't quite remember exactly which session that is, but that is at Fox Studios, and it's for a motion picture.
Excellent. Now,
and that's me just praying that everything went well.
Did it? Well, I'm sure it did, because you've been involved in some pretty major league things. What are some of the things that you've been involved in, Caryn? Can you just mention a couple of the projects?
Aquaman, that was probably the biggest one altogether for a motion picture. There was like 13,000, when all was said and done, 13,000 pieces of parts, not scores or anything, just what players were looking at by the time of the 2 weeks were done. And we printed out 13,000 sheets of paper. So it was that, and also doing live, when they play live orchestra to the film behind it, which isn't really happening right now, but before it was a big thing. We worked on the two most recent Star Treks, where they could play all the way through, showing the movie and playing with a live orchestra.
How exciting. I remember being involved in a couple of those things at the Hollywood Bowl with the Philharmonic that you were involved with as well. Now, Geoff, you too have been involved with the recording industry. Can you, I know we're going to take a look at some of the things that you brought along to share with us, but can you tell us about some of the things that you have been involved in that our audience might be interested in hearing about?
Sure. I was playing clarinet for the soundtrack for the series Monk that was on the former USA Network for about 7 seasons. And that was really a great deal of fun and a lot of interesting challenges. And I've also played for a number of movies, motion pictures. The things that I'm most proud of are the most recent animation films that I did, one for Disney and one for Warner Brothers. And in addition to that, I've done a lot of freelance recording as just a solo person showing up to composer studios for a whole range of products and a bunch of different musical styles.
Yeah, that kind of recording, many people aren't familiar with that, where you just show up and then you are plugged into things that have happened by other people showing up, right?
Exactly.
Darn, that's interesting. Well, now, Geoff, from what I understand, did you bring along something that you're going to share with us now? Is that correct? What do you mean?
Yes. So this is a group of musicians that I performed with some years back that we where we're actually performing live locally, and we decided to record an album. It's featuring singer Donna Duzin with the Paul White's trio. Paul was the leader and guitarist of the group, and they brought me in to play clarinet and flute on several tracks. What I would see in the music was typically just the notes of the melody and the lyrics and the chords. And the rest of it was pretty much up to me to figure out how to decorate. So I have opportunities to improvise solos and also to back up with the singer.
That's great. So can we take a look at that now, please?
Yes, please.
They will miss her, I fear, but then so will I. Of gold somewhere in her own little head. One day, all too soon, she'll grow up and she'll leave her dolls and her prince and her silly old bear. When she goes, they will cry as they whisper goodbye. They will miss her, I fear, but then so. They will miss her, I fear, but then so. They will miss her, I fear, but then so
Oh, that's great, Geoff. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Bravo,
Thank you.
Now, Caryn, I understand that, of course, you've been involved in a lot of high-end things. You were just talking about that. And I understand that you have a video clip that you're going to share with us. Can you tell us a little bit about this before we go ahead and play it?
Oh, yeah. This is about a 30-second clip of a video that I shot just from my seat at Warner Brothers Studios when we were there a couple of years ago, back when we did Aquaman. Not really supposed to do that kind of stuff, so it was a little shaky and hidden. But
we won't tell anybody. We don't worry about it. The 7,000 viewers won't say anything. Don't worry.
Yeah. So this is just like a 30-second clip of at nighttime. Lots of times on these recording sessions, they split the strings away from the brass so that they can have better mixing capabilities. So this is just the brass at nighttime. Just a 30-second clip.
Great. So if we can take a look at it, that would be great. Wow, that's just great. Just a hint at what goes on in the big time recording world from both Geoff and Caryn. Thank you so much for sharing some of those things with you. Now I'd like to turn to somebody who's also involved in in actually more of the record industry, a man who I know as a clarinet player with the LA Winds, but he comes to us with a very interesting background, and I'd like you to join me in welcoming to the live stream today, the Four Winds on Wednesday, Mr. Paul Frederick. Paul, if you'll join us, that'd be just great.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, listen, as I said, I know you, Paul, mostly as a clarinet player in the fantastic clarinet section with the Los Angeles Symphonic Winds. But I also know that you are not interested only in classical music that the band normally plays, but jazz and big band stuff as well. Could you tell me just briefly how you got involved with music to begin with and where you were when this took place?
My grandfather he played in the 30s and 40s and 50s, all the live radio shows and TV shows in New York. So I met him obviously when he was retired, and I heard of this old vintage music. I mean, now it's vintage music. Back then it was the pop music of the day. So I grew up hearing, the pop music from 1920 to teens to 50s to early 60s. So I was just exposed to it when I was 8 years old. So it just so then I started writing in that genre, and I got a couple of publishing deals, and I have songs in the TV show Chicago PD, Nashville, this AT&T series, I'm the Night. They're all like vintage jazz cues that people, when they need for these vintage scenes. Even a couple of Disney shows, children's shows, I have vintage jazz cues in them that I composed and wrote and performed. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, most of that education, at the beginning at least, took place at the State University of New York in Albany, if I'm not mistaken, and then at the very prestigious Eastman School of Music in Rochester. What brought you to California?
California, I came out here to study film scoring, writing with large orchestras with at the UCLA program they have in film scoring. And I ended up just staying here. Yeah. And I ended up working for a German composer on TV shows right afterwards. He had just come over from Germany and needed to fill out his staff. So I worked on Babylon 5 and Walker, Texas Ranger and MOWs. Right after that program, I got this job. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, I understand that you brought along a clip to share with us. Can you tell us a little bit about this before we have a listen to it?
Yeah, this is my band. I'm also a band leader. These are songs I wrote, and they're through some of the publishing deals I have, and then we decided to do a live performance. So the first song is called French for a Day. It's about what would be like if you're French for a day, and it's co-written with the vocalist Valerie Peterson. And the other piece is called West Coast Cool in 3, which is I did a cool jazz album series for music licensing, and that's one of the tracks from there. And this is just a live performance we did for TOCA, which is the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation. They sponsored this concert in May. Yeah.
Excellent. So if we can, let's take a look and a listen. I'm excited about sharing this. Let's do it.
Possibly fret when my daily twilight is reading Mademoiselle and bathing in pools of champagne. I would sip Chardonnay.
Wow, that's just great, Paul. Thank you so much for sharing it. It just reminds me of the fact that the Los Angeles Symphonic Winds are have such a big tent, don't we? I mean, the amount of talent that we have. I'm so privileged to serve as the artistic director of this group that has so many just great, talented people doing all sorts of things. Listen to the stuff we heard today. Carolyne with a very classical thing at the beginning, then the discussion about the motion picture industry, and then some West Coast jazz. What a great show and some great players. And I want to thank, and before I bring them all back to say goodbye, though, I want to talk to you about the next show that we do, which will be 2 weeks from today. It is, what will that be? It would be 26th, right? May 26th, where we'll have 3 trombones and woodwinds too. We'll be featuring Mike Hicks, Daniel Orkin, and Andrea Vancouver. 3 of our trombonists are going to be part of interviews and performers, and also Debbie McMurray, who you heard talking about the low flutes. She's going to do a piccolo solo with the LA Winds, and we'll have that for you at that program. And then we were going to finish up with Andrew Robinson, another really fine clarinet player performing. So that's in 2 weeks. In the meantime, make sure we have your information so we can get those tickets out to you for the concerts that we're doing at Skirball, where we'll feature Carolyne Maraghi, and we'll also feature Geoff Nudell as soloist. And of course, Caryn will be part of the band, and Paul Frederick will be part of the band, and I will have my back to you as the conductor of the band. So it should be just great. So let's bring back our stars from today's episode to say goodbye. There's Caryn, there's Geoff, there's Paul.
Here we are.
And did Carolyne decide not to show up for this goodbye? All right, we will say goodbye on behalf of everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for today's stars of Four Winds on Wednesdays. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.